Well, good evening. Thank you for coming out tonight. We got a pretty special night. This is Glimpses Coffee House once again. But I need to do a little bit of housekeeping. The reason why we're able to keep our doors open, pay the electricity, is because of German car service. So I just want to thank German car service for what they do for the community of Fairfield and Vacaville and Suisun. But tonight, we've got a very special person, Jennifer Goode, who's running for Vacaville Council. So please give her a warm welcome.
Well, hello again, friends. We talked earlier last week, and I have come back to just visit you again and tell you a little bit more about my campaign. My name is Jennifer Goode, and I am running for Vacaville City Council. And just going to kind of have a conversation with all of you tonight, and if there's questions, we can bring those up and ask those along the way. Essentially, I got involved in this race because I thought Vacaville needed a new voice, and primarily that voice is a voice that's going to represent the residents of Vacaville. I don't necessarily think that their voice is being heard on a Tuesday night at City Hall, and I'm hoping to kind of bring that perspective there. So I'm just going to tell you a little bit about myself and my background. Some of you may not know this. I was born in Illinois, small town. It was about 14,000 people when I grew up there. Blue-collar, working-class town. Both my parents, my mom was a stay-at-home mom. My dad worked at Caterpillar for a long time and eventually started his own business. There was a time in our lives when he worked 2 and 3 jobs to support our family. And essentially, I was brought up with the notion that life is tough and you do what you got to do and you get over it and you power through and you keep on moving. And that was sort of the ideology that we were brought up in, or at least the home we were brought up in. I put myself through school. I went to Loyola University in Chicago and graduated with honors with a degree in political science. From there, I went to law school, graduated with my Juris Doctor in 2003 from the John Marshall Law School. I entered the private sector in 2003 when I moved to California and have been working there ever since. I don't practice law, so I like to tell people I'm a reformed character. So I think that makes me a little bit more likable, maybe, than if I did practice law. But I still have the know-how and the skills and the understanding to be able to address issues that come up. And I think that skill set would be extremely useful at the city council level. With regards to Vacaville needing a new voice, I think if you look at the council structure for the last 10 years, the majority of the folks there have been born and raised in Vacaville. And I think that's great, to grow up in a community and live there your entire life and get involved and then try to do something good for your city, and I commend that. But I'd like to note that I don't think good ideas are just born and raised in Vacaville. I think good ideas can come from other places as well. And if you look at the demographics of Vacaville, the population is changing. We've grown substantially just in the years that I've been there. And right now I don't think that voice is completely represented on a Tuesday night. I am a commuter. I don't work in Vacaville. I would love to work in Vacaville. I haven't had the opportunity to do that yet, but I commute outside of Vacaville for work, and then I come home and I live there and take part in city activities, the events, the parks, and things like that. I think most people do that, and if you look at that demographic, it's not currently being represented on the city council. What I would like to do is make government accessible to those who live there who can't make it on a Tuesday night. I think we all know that government should be responsive to the people, should be accessible, and should be transparent, and I don't think we necessarily get that all the time. A lot of the issues that come up with regards to government have to do with it not responding to the people they represent. And I think in order to do that, we have to necessarily bring government to the people. One of the things I'm looking at doing in Vacaville is bringing government to people who can't make it on a Tuesday night. If you're a commuter like me, you're getting home around 6:30 at night. If you have children, you're making them dinner, you're helping them with homework. The last place you want to be is at City Hall on a Tuesday night. And I don't think that our representatives have heard enough from the people that live there. So what I would like to do is on a Saturday, twice a month, let's bring government to the people. Let's enjoy one of Vacaville's nice parks. Let's get out there, bring our coffee, let's sit down, let's have a discussion. And let's talk about what works for Vacaville and what doesn't work for Vacaville. Why do you like living here? What keeps you here? What things would you like to change? And I think we would have a much more honest dialogue than we're having on a Tuesday night. I think a lot of special interests speak on a Tuesday night, and that's great because they have their say-so too. but we also need to listen to the people who live there, and they don't always have a voice. So that's something that I would like to bring to light. Another concern that I have in Vacaville has to do with the crime rates. We do know that crime is increasing. We've seen it in surrounding cities as well. And if you look at our budget woes, which a lot of cities are struggling with right now, we see that the city continually chips away at public safety. And I personally have a problem with that. I think that one of the legitimate purposes of government is to provide safety and security to its citizens. That's the whole notion of the social contract that we have, where we give a little bit up to get a little bit in return. We're supposed to provide public safety services to folks. That's what you're paying taxes for. And when we continue to chip away at that budget, what is that doing to the quality of life in Vacaville? Now, there's savings to be found in every agency and every department, but I don't necessarily think that we always need to go to public safety first. I think the reason why we do go there a lot is because it's one of the biggest budgets, and rightfully so, because it's a service that the city is supposed to provide. But it doesn't necessarily mean that it's the most wasteful budget, or you know, that there's room to cut there. I think we can look at other departments and other ways for the city to save money, and I don't think that's been happening. With regards to saving money other places, contract negotiations, getting the most bang for our buck, we're not doing that. We had an issue come up with services a couple Tuesday nights ago at City Council with regards to garbage services. The city had the opportunity to save itself $1 million there, provide some additional amenities to its customers with regards to what type of garbage service they want. It would provide free garbage service to the school district, and just had some other great things that it could offer. And the city chose to go with the agency that was currently in place. And not to say anything derogatory about them, because I think they're a great agency. They've been doing wonderful things for Vacaville. But we're in a financial crisis right now, and we need to look for savings at every step of the way. And when you have an opportunity to save your city $1 million and you don't do it, and you don't have any foreseeable legitimate sources of revenue that are definitely going to come in the near future, I think you have a responsibility to take a stand and do what's necessary to save that money. And I don't think that's necessarily happening. So there is savings in other places. We don't always have to go to public safety first. If you look at Vacaville's police departments, we are understaffed. We're serving a community of almost 100,000 people, and there's not enough officers on the streets to handle what is happening out there. I've had the opportunity to do a ride-along with Vacaville PD. They're hardworking, they're professional, they're well-trained, they know exactly what they need to do. And what's really cool about them is that they also live in Vacaville. They're raising their families here, they have a stake in the city, and they want to see the city do well as well also. They want the quality of life to remain high, and it's really cool that we have a partner like our officers who are also living there and helping our city to not only stay safe when they're on the clock, but also when they're off the clock, and that's pretty cool. Other things that I want to talk about: development. I am currently a commissioner on the Community Services Commission. I have a chance to kind of get involved with the soul of Vacaville, is what I like to call it. Some of our community events where folks come out, bring their families, get involved. It's pretty neat to see, and you don't always hear about that aspect on Tuesday nights. In fact, Tuesday nights, I don't know if necessarily that gets represented at all. Right now, in terms of parkland, Vacaville is under what its parkland should be, but we still have some nice parks, and that's a good thing. One of the things that I would like to do is talk about increasing fees on our developers so that we have the money to set aside to continue providing those services to our residents. Community services is what attracted a lot of companies to Vacaville. Genentech was very interested in Vacaville, and they built there because we had things like a cultural center, because we had things like a theater. And to be able to offer a company as large as Genentech with their diverse workforce to come to Vacaville, that's a good thing, and that's something that we should continue. I hope that we can do so. One of the things on the ticket for November is Measure I, which is a continuation of a tax that residents voted for almost 10 years ago, just to sort of bring those things to Vacaville. And I'm a fiscal conservative. I don't like paying taxes, but I think when you look at taxes on a local level, it's a little bit different than paying taxes at a state or federal level. You can actually trace that money a little bit better than you can at a larger level. And what's cool about at the local level, if we can keep government local, is that when you vote on an issue or you receive monies or you increase funding or anything like that, you're going to see that difference in the community within 6 months. You're going to feel that change. You're going to see that development. You're going to see an improvement. And you don't necessarily see that when you pay taxes at a larger level, like a state or federal level. That money gets funneled away, and we don't necessarily know what happens to it. At a local level, we can track it a little bit better. We've been doing that with Measure I. It's a good thing. It's provided good things for Vacaville. It's on the ballot. I support it. I support it because it attracted businesses to Vacaville. It maintains a high quality of life for us. It keeps people engaged in their community. If you don't support it, you don't have to vote for it, but I would recommend doing so because it's really helped our community. The other tax measure on the ballot is Measure M. That has to do with the sales tax. And as a fiscal conservative, it's odd to say, but I'm actually in favor of a sales tax as well. And I'll tell you why. For so long, Vacaville has grown and developed, and we've really catered to business along the I-80 corridor. And we've really tried to attract folks that are traveling through here to spend their money. A lot of the development that we've had in recent years with regards to our retail and our hospitality industry has catered towards that stream of business. I think if we are going to develop ourselves as a community to attract that sort of revenue, then we also need to charge for it. And if you look at the surrounding communities, we're still lower than the surrounding communities. The folks that are bringing their money to Vacaville are used to paying a higher tax. It's going to hit the residents for a little bit. The good thing about it is it's a 5-year tax. It expires at the end of 5 years. It provides us a little bit of cushion so we can maintain the quality of life that we have until the economy can improve and the other factors that are affecting cities right now. It kind of gives us a lifeboat, and we need that, and I'm in favor of that. If they don't pass, I'm worried what's going to happen. I don't think the city has a backup plan right now. I believe that everything's going to be on the table if those don't pass, and that can be a scary time for our city, and I would hate to see that happen. So those are just some of the things that I'm hoping to bring to the table, talk about. Another thing is local control. Obviously, we know that government is structured in such a way that each sector of government has certain responsibilities that it needs to follow. At a federal level, we know that's our Constitution, right? The federal government should be following the Constitution. That doesn't always happen, and we see that. The state government is usually finds their powers in the 10th Amendment. You know, those powers not reserved to the federal government are reserved to the states. We know that. At a local level, government's going to be a little bit more involved in your life. But again, I think that's good because you're going to have it's going to have an immediate effect on your quality of life. If you're not happy with the way things are going, you can access those representatives right away, talk about it, complain about it, do something about it. You don't necessarily have those opportunities at a higher level. In Vacaville, I think our representatives are elected as a check on the administration of city services. And we don't always see them acting as a check. A lot of times we see them falling in line with what city administration or city manager has put out there. I don't think that's the way our representatives are supposed to work. I think they're supposed to do their research. I think they're supposed to listen to the information that's provided. And I think they need to do what's best for the residents of Vacaville. I don't think that's always happening. And in light of some of these more frequent meetings that we've seen with regards to these contracts, we know that's not happening. I'm not here to make friends with anybody. I have plenty of friends. I'm hoping to do the right thing for Vacaville. And we'll see how that turns out, and hopefully the voters will buy into that, and hopefully they're looking for someone to take a stand. And you know, we might go against the grain a little bit, but if it means a better quality of life for our citizens, if it means more officers on the street, if it means getting our budget under control, I think that's a good thing. So that's a little bit about me. I said I wanted to keep this a conversation, so if there's questions, I'm happy to answer anything.
The recent Chick-fil-A was in the news. Could you comment about your feeling towards what went on?
Well, I think with regards to Chick-fil-A, I believe my understanding of it is that the owner, the CEO, had come out publicly and made some comments with what he believes, his personal beliefs, how he believes a business should be run. And he got some flack in the media for that because folks didn't agree with his viewpoints. I don't care whether you agree with someone's viewpoint that's running a business, but they should still have the ability to run the business the way they want to. Government should not be administering land use permits or business use permits because of one's own personal thoughts and beliefs. then we're kind of going along the lines of the thought police, and I don't like that. We have a First Amendment that protects what you want to say, how you want to think, how you want to feel, and I don't necessarily think that government should get involved with that. I think the response that we saw to his comments and the folks that came out and catered his restaurant on that day, I think that was really cool to see people in support of our First Amendment rights. Whether you agree or disagree with him, that's your choice, and that's a good thing, and that should remain. I get really concerned about government stepping in and limiting someone's speech, whether I agree with them or not. We're not always going to agree, but at least I will fight for your right to say what you want to say, to believe what you want to say, because under the Constitution, you're allowed to, and we should support that. And we've seen First Amendment issues come up at City Council as well in terms of limiting viewpoint discussion, who can come up and talk during public comment. Like, that's ridiculous. We're giving you a platform to speak. You should have the right to say what you want to say, whether I want to hear it or not. As your government representative, I may not like what I hear, but you still have the right to say it, and I'm not going to limit your ability to do that.
One thing that we're seeing is all over the country we're seeing police out of control. There's a woman beaten, and fortunately it was picked up on a camera. The police didn't know. She was using a cell phone, and they beat her up pretty bad with handcuffs on in the police car. What should the council have in place before that happens, as far as controlling, disciplining? You know, most of us would think, well, if that was my wife, you know, possibly the death penalty. You would feel that, whether that's the sort of rage you would feel if your wife or mother was smacked about like that by people who pledged an oath to the Constitution and are out of control.
I am not familiar with that personal instance, so I'm not able to speak to the facts of what happened.
Well, it's gone on. There was another gentleman who was shot in the back of the head because he was running away. And they used a Navy-type weapon that they had purchased. And, you know, you spoke about the police, and yeah, we're all for the police. But when they start coming to you to demand, well, we need a better tank so we can smash in people's homes, we need a better gun so that we can take the citizen who's going to kill us first. There seems there's such a fear generated in the police force right now that they're saying, well, we've got to get better weapons, we've got to better, more money, more money. What have you got to say for those people coming to you?
Well, I definitely think that the criminal mind and the criminal patterns are changing. Our criminals are getting smarter. They have weapons that our police force cannot combat. I think that we need to make sure that our police officers have the appropriate resources and tools necessary to do their job and carry out the function of their job in accordance with the oath that they took when they were hired. There are a lot of instances where we hear you know, folks who step out of line and may not necessarily act in accordance with what their job duties are. I think there's a process in place that speaks to that. I don't want people to be fearful of the police. They're there to protect you. You're also able to protect yourself. You have a Second Amendment that says, you know, you have the right to bear arms. If you're able to obtain a firearm lawfully and you want to use it to guard your house, more power to you. You should. Nobody should be a victim, and I think people have to take steps to be accountable and protect themselves when the police can't get there in time. With regards to those particular instances, I can't speak to them specifically just because I'm not familiar with the facts involved. But that being said, I do think we have to equip our police force with regards to the change in criminal patterns and criminal behavior. That being said, mistakes get made. Like I said, I can't comment on those specific instances because I'm not familiar with them.
That wasn't my question. My question is, what would you put in place before you have bad cops? What have you got in place to discipline them, to bring them to a point? The police chief in the one instance said, well, we've reassigned them. Well, as a citizen, I don't want them reassigned.
You want to?
I don't want them off the street. They're not to be police officers.
I think if a mistake is made as egregious as the situation that you described, that full accountability and responsibility should be taken by the city council, by the police force, and the necessary measures to remove that person who may present a threat or a danger to its residents should be taken off the streets. Obviously, I don't like the idea of not taking the proper recourse so our citizens feel safe when a police officer is out there on the streets. Nobody should feel threatened by our police force. They're good guys. They're working for us. But we need to make sure that if mistakes are made, that city council and city government steps up and handles them appropriately, deals with them the way they're supposed to. With regards to current reprimanding procedures, I'm not familiar what their protocol is. I'm happy to look that up for you. I'm happy to speak to them and see what they have in place and what they do currently, and bring that back to you if you'd like to know more about that. I wish I had more to say on that issue. I don't. But I think that if there is a mistake made as egregious as that, and the facts support the fact that one of our officers was at fault, then we would take the necessary means to make sure that responsibility and accountability is accepted.
Can I dovetail on that with another question? Is with these cutbacks, do you think that the city will become more of a beginning point for young police officers, and they'll get their training here and get their foot in the door and then go off to other departments that are maybe more stable financially or pay more or things like that?
We've seen that happen in the past, and I think one of the issues that somebody brought up is, we need to let the market decide. We need to let the market decide pricing and benefits and salary and things like that. And I think we've seen that happen in the past. With regards to salary, Vacaville, 10 years ago was a lot lower than its surrounding communities. And folks would come to Vacaville, the city would spend its money and its resources and its training to get these folks up to speed and bring them on board. And then what they would do is when they had the proper certification and training and accreditation to become either a law enforcement, an officer of law enforcement or a firefighter, they'd jump ship and they'd go to the city that had better benefits programs and a better salary. And you can't blame them, because everybody wants, to make sure they're secure. They want to make sure that they're doing what's right for themselves. That's the market, right? As consumers, we're going to go where we can get the best deal. It was no different with our police and firefighters. You can't blame them for coming to a city and getting on with a department and then jumping ship for a better deal. I think anybody in that position would do that. I'm worried about that happening again. Our officers and our firefighters have proposed concessions to repeal some of their retirement benefits and their salaries in order to maintain staffing levels, even though those staffing levels are well below what they should be right now. But they basically took a hit for the team to maintain their officers and save some jobs. And what could happen is if we bring new folks on under this new benefit system and the economy recovers and everybody is doing well again, I'm afraid we're going to see this trend happen again. And that's a lot of wasted revenue, it's a lot of wasted resources, and it's a lot of wasted talent. And that's essentially historically why Vacaville changed their retirement system to 3% at 50. Right now, for new hires, it's 2% at 50. That could become an issue again. I hope that it doesn't. But, the market has to play it out. There's a lot of factors in play, just not only on a municipal level, but also at a state and federal level. And we'll see where it takes us.
Do you think it's more important to get the reserves back up, or to be able to have the flexibility to go with the flow of the market and pay more when it becomes necessary, when we can do it?
Well, obviously having solid reserve funding is a good thing. Everybody should have a savings just in case times get a little tough and you can fall back and you have a cushion. That being said, I don't think we should maintain reserve levels to such a point where we hamstring other aspects of city administration. Double-digit reserves are nice, but if we can't maintain that, let's maintain what we can. Let's keep a little bit of cushion there, but let's not hamstring the other essential services that a city provides because we're so focused on maintaining our reserves.
As a council person, would you investigate what's happened with the redevelopment agency and how that was unwound, and what's happened to all the assets and the money, and to find out if Vacaville is being given the short end of the stick or not?
Well, obviously, ending redevelopment threw a lot of California cities for a loop. They weren't prepared for that. With regards to redevelopment funds, essentially what we know for our cities statewide is that it was a giant slush fund that the cities used in order to redevelop underdeveloped or more blighted parts of their city. What we've found since that redevelopment has gone away is that a lot of cities have used that money for other things not necessarily considered redevelopment. And so now you see cities have trouble because this revenue stream that we had before is now gone, and now you can see where exactly that money has gone. That's problematic. It's a reason why we're going to have this budget deficit that the city is warning us about, that we see at least in the budget reports that are coming out. That's why these tax measures that are coming up are so vital to help fill in that gap. But in the meantime, we need to talk about what are we going to do now that this agency is winding down. How do we start saving money that we don't have this revenue stream dependent on? And rather than ending that agency completely, what we know and what's been reported to us by the city is that a lot of that staff and resources that were contained in redevelopment have been shifted to other agencies in the city. So it's not necessarily that we got rid of it, but we've moved resources around. And I don't necessarily think that was what was intended with the abolishment of redevelopment, but it's what's happened. Again, there's an opportunity for us to find savings. If we don't have a redevelopment agency, we don't have a need for those positions any longer. We have to do what's right for our city. I think what's right for our city is maintaining our public safety levels. I think it's maintaining our quality of life. And if an agency disappears or is mandated by the state that we need to end it, then we need to end the program and not try to shift these resources and save something that's essentially no longer there.
You mentioned about the federal government earlier. Mm-hmm. We're seeing more and more the federal government intruding in local politics. What's your feelings on that?
I think the federal government has a very specific purpose. I think it's a very limited purpose. I think it's spelled out by the Constitution. And I don't think necessarily that that's what we're seeing at a federal level. We're seeing the federal government become entangled in our states. We're seeing it happen at a local level. An issue of that, for example, that the EPA, not only the state EPA, but the federal EPA, Vacaville, we had an issue with our water not too long ago. There was a regulation that basically said our water is not quite up to par yet. We're not reaching this level that the EPA deems is, a clean or a sanitary or a safe level. So Vacaville had to spend money to basically correct the problem to be in accordance with the EPA. But if you look right down the stream from where this development had to happen to clean our water, we have cows grazing in the water. There's other things in the water. I don't necessarily think that the improvements that we made necessarily achieved a safer quality of water. But according to the EPA and these federal and state regulations, it's now in compliance. So that's just an example of where federal regulations, state regulations are bleeding into local governments, and it costs not only the city money, but that cost was, of course, passed on to the residents in the form of a tax. I think the federal government has a very limited purpose. We know what that purpose is. It's outlined by our Constitution. The state has a little bit broader purpose, just mainly because of what the 10th Amendment says. Case law has supported the fact that states have jurisdiction in areas relating to health, safety, morals, and welfare. That's what case law has said. Obviously, maybe they kind of expanded that for this particular regulation with regards to water. The cities need to stand up for themselves and say enough's enough. There's a certain purpose for these certain jurisdictions, and right now we're seeing them bleed over into all the different levels.
Recently I was watching the Planning Commission on TV, and I always hear politicians talk about how they want to bring more businesses into town. There's a guy that's about ready to open his business in 6 weeks, and he's before the commission to get permission to have a sign similar to other ones in town. It's a lighted sign. It's not one of those big freeway signs or something, but it's kind of, I guess it's like the one by Meeks. It has lights and things. But anyway, there's 2 people on the commission. There's 2 people absent, 2 people on the commission that were saying, let's let this guy have his sign, and let's let him open his business and, wish him well. But then staff and the other 3 planning commissioners were saying, well, I don't think we want to do that because we don't know about whatever. And then the staff said, well, it'd be, a month or 2 months before we would be able to get to studying this issue, so he couldn't have a sign anytime before then. But you guys could go ahead and grant a waiver, but then he might be spending money foolishly because we might later say, no, he can't have his sign. And I'm thinking, this is nuts. We want more businesses, and here's a guy that wants a sign so people can know about his business, and we're making him jump through hoops.
Not very business friendly.
What would you do as a council person?
Well, I think it's important that we support our local businesses. Obviously, small business is the backbone of America. We hear that all the time, and it's the truth. because it's these small business that not only improve the quality of life in their cities, they get our citizens engaged, they provide jobs, they provide services that, you know, governments do not necessarily provide. And if we have the opportunity to promote a local business who the citizens are catering to and obviously provide a useful service, then why can't we do everything in our power to help him? I don't necessarily know the type of sign that he was looking to build or implement. It doesn't sound to me like it's a big deal. If it creates a safety issue, obviously that's something that has to be considered, and you have to weigh that with regards to building a sign. But I think we need to be a little bit more friendly to our small businesses. Our larger businesses or our corporate chains, they kind of have all those means in place to deal with regulations and signage and things like that. Our smaller businesses don't necessarily have the legal counsel, the resources, the means, you know, the ability to research those issues ahead of time. I don't necessarily think a sign is a huge deal. We have lots of lit up and more of the newer sort of LED signs in town. I don't know of an accident that's happened yet because of one of those signs. I think it's a good idea. If it's going to help his business and it's going to generate traffic in an area where we need to bring in more businesses, let's do what we can to support the small business owner. And if we don't have the knowledge at that time to make that decision, let's do the research so we can help this person. That's what you're elected to do. That's, as a commissioner, that's what you're appointed to do. If you're not doing it, then you're failing the residents of Vacaville. And you know, I'd be happy to look into that issue a little bit closer and just kind of see exactly what sort of signage he's looking to provide, provided that you don't have a serious safety risk posed with it, and it's not going to hurt the other residents of the community. I think we should do what we can to help them. I mean, we want our small businesses to thrive, and right now they're threatened by our large corporate chains that we're bringing in, or we're running them out. We need to reverse that trend.
The cooperation of the media, the ideal thing would to be get that into the media so people can say, well, why come to Vacaville?
Yeah,
why bother? If it's that tough. I started a business in England. I didn't have to make a phone call. I didn't have to sign any documents. I just started. At the end of the year, I went to my accountant and said, this is what I've spent. This is what I took in. He said, okay. 2 weeks later, he said, this is what you owe the government. That was it.
There's a lot of red tape right now.
Yeah, no licensing, nothing. You just start your business and
We need to make the process easier. We need to streamline the process. We need to promote people who have these great ideas to want to build their businesses. Right now, the amount of bureaucracy in place and the process being so troublesome to do that, people don't want to start their own businesses, and you can't blame them. And they might have the next best thing out there that's going to benefit our city or benefit someone's health or anything like that. And the fact that we're not there to encourage it, instead we're there preventing it, that's problematic. Government is not supposed to get in the way of you living your life. You're supposed to be able to live your life, and government kind of functions around that, and we don't see that happening. If you took that issue to the media, I think you'd see a reversal on that decision. If people realize what that issue really was and what it entailed and how we're preventing the small business owner from being able to advertise and grow his business, that's problematic. I think a lot of small business owners would have an issue with that. Like I said, I'm happy to look into it a little bit further for more information on that. But I think we need to do what we can do to support our local businesses, to grow our local business, to encourage other people to build their businesses, because that's how you're going to get a community to thrive. We can't constantly rely on these large corporate chains to carry us and end up looking like a cookie-cutter city like everything else here in California. Helping folks build their small businesses increases the quality of life in Vacaville. It promotes the culture. It helps develop a history. It brings a little bit of charm and nostalgia to a city. We need to promote those things and not prevent those things.
You mentioned about going into the parks, and obviously that's for council members. What about getting the staff out there? The people that Dave was talking about who are preventing businesses from getting going. And we mentioned this last week about my wife would prefer to go to Vacaville than shop in Fairfield. And the tone has been set. I wonder if this sets the tone for a business starting out. It's so much hard work that you think, can I even make it? I had to get a loan, and I got to pay all this interest, if you can get a loan today anyway. So everything is really tough, and it's against you. So
we have to be aware of the precedent that we're setting with the votes that we make. And I'm concerned about setting a precedent where we're not going to allow a small business a sign because we either don't have the information or we've not dealt with an issue like this. We want to be very cautious about setting that tone because, like you said, it's going to prevent folks from coming into the city. It's going to prevent folks from wanting to build their businesses. We need to be more business friendly. As a council member, I would encourage other council members to attend some of these commission meetings. I serve on the Community Services Commission. Rarely do we ever see a council member come and sit in to see what we're doing. We need to be sitting in those meetings. We need to be reviewing the minutes. We need to be talking to those commissioners so we have that insight. That's what we're there for. We're the specialists in those areas, and they're supposed to be seeking our advice when they're making these decisions, and I don't see that happening necessarily. I don't know if any council members were at the meeting, that planning commission meeting that you referenced, but if there wasn't, there should have been, because we might have been able to help a small business owner grow his business, and we didn't. And that could be a missed opportunity and a precedent that we set that we may not be able to change.
So I understand that the two main things of a representative, and a council member is a representative of the community, is to investigate and to report back. The media is supposed to take up the role of, reporting and digging. Our local media doesn't. So as a council person, will you investigate these things and will you report back to the constituency, even if it rocks the boat with your other council members?
I definitely think if you are represented to do a job, that you're not just going to rely on the reports that staff is providing. You have to do your own research as well, and you have to be proactive. You have to talk to members in the community. I think by reaching out to our community, like I mentioned earlier about going into our parks and sitting down with our friends and neighbors in certain districts and getting feedback from them is going to help you to decide those issues. I don't know if that's happening right now. Like I said, the folks that show up on a Tuesday night aren't always representative of the entire community. It is important to do your research. It's important to look beyond what staff provides, and you may not always agree with them, and that's a good thing because you're supposed to be a check on how the city administers its services. And if you're failing to do that, then you're failing in representing the people, and then you may need to rethink about what you're doing there.
See, I had a question about flood control. Every 10 years or so, the Peabody area, Tulare area of Vacaville floods out, and there is I think some federal money came down, and they're supposed to be building flood retention basins north of town. And I haven't really heard a good report back from the city council on the status of flood control for Vacaville. And then the second point is, as far as Vacaville is concerned, I would worry about too much development in that I think we've already had to drill one more well. And I would just like the Planning Commission and the City Council to keep an eye on water resources. Like if we build too many new houses, are we going to have the capacities to supply those houses with water? So if you were elected, would you be willing to report back to us on the status of flood control?
Absolutely, and I'm not well versed in that issue either. I've heard it come up before in the past. I don't know if the issue was tabled or where exactly it's at right now, but I'm happy to follow up on that and do some research and see what exactly is happening with that particular issue. With regards to building new development, we have to be very careful about that because when we build new development and we grow our borders, what we're doing is we're putting a drain on the existing resources. And when that happens, you need to be able to replace those resources so you can accommodate these growing parts of the city. Right now, I don't know necessarily that we're doing that. We're not doing it in public safety. We don't have enough parkland to accommodate the new developments being built. And in fact, we have a development in North Village that was built on the premise that there was going to be a park there. The city doesn't have the money to build the park there. That's problematic for those folks because they purchased and they bought there for that reason. And now, it may be years before that's a possibility for them. That's unfortunate. People come to Vacaville for a quality of life, and to not be able to provide that to them, what are we doing? Where's the money going? We need to investigate that. With regards to development, one of the things I would like to focus on is working on doing a better job with gentrifying the areas that are more depressed in our town. Mainly because we know that the infrastructure is already there. We're not putting another drain on the city. We're already using the infrastructure that's there. So it's different with regards to how we're pulling resources. We have roads there. We have sidewalks there. Let's work on developing what we have. Let's work with what we have, and then we can talk about growing. Growth is good because it brings in additional revenue, but it's a double-edged sword, right? If we're bringing in that revenue, but we're not able to provide safety or parks or things like that, that's problematic. So we definitely have to find that balance. I'm in favor of developing more of our blighted areas because the infrastructure is already existing, as opposed to our first instance is to go straight to new developments. I would like to develop what we have and what needs work and then go from there.
Well, thank you very much, Jennifer.
Thank you for having me. Appreciate it.
We certainly appreciate it. We hope we haven't been too harsh on you.
No, I appreciate the questions. I mean, as a representative, you're going to get some tough questions. You're going to have to answer to the folks, and that's what you should be doing. And I'm not always going to have the answers, but if I don't have the answers, I'm happy to do the research in order to provide those answers.
So if anybody wants to contact you?
Our website is goodeforvacaville.org. It's good with an E, so it's Goode for Vacaville.org. You can donate on there. You can endorse me. You can ask questions. You can volunteer. We're looking for all of that right now. We're just getting started. We have about 70 days until November 6th, so we're moving forward.
Good. You feel confident then?
I feel confident. I'm here to win it, so yeah.
Well, good. Well, thank you for coming out.
Thank you.
Yes, Matt mentioned that we had invited somebody else who was running for the city council. They didn't turn up tonight, so
Okay.
we appreciate
Well, I'm happy
that.
to be here. I'm happy to come back, and you guys can contact me after the fact if there's additional questions.
Excellent. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Hi, my name is Paul Kent at German Car Service.
Located at 1501 West Texas Street in Fairfield.
Our goal is to meet the needs of our customers, Mercedes, VW, BMW, and Volvo.
German Car Service uses state-of-the-art diagnostic computer equipment and specially trained master mechanics. We've made the investment in equipment technicians and training to help you preserve your investment in a fine European automobile. Our equipment, our service, and our people give you true confidence in your car's reliability and performance.
At German Car Service, we like to do the unexpected.
As we work for you, at German Car Service, we will conduct a complete inspection of your vehicle for free, advising you of any problems that you need to know about.
To our military, we thank you.
Military members receive a 10% discount. To make your appointment, call today.
425-9111. Thank you.
German Car Service, 1501 West Texas Street in Fairfield.